Yeah, some brands can be a little bit harsh, but properly distilled, aged in oak, whether bourbon, Tennessee sour mash, made from corn, barley, winter wheat, or my favorite rye, there's nothing so sweet. But not so sweet has been the spirit's long-standing hostile relationship with government entities that manifests itself quite often in excessive regulation and taxes. This is ironic considering that one of the early sparks of the Revolutionary War was some New Englanders protesting heavy taxes on rum. Yet one of the first acts of then President George Washington was to enact an excise tax on the production of whiskey, which some farmers in southwestern Pennsylvania didn't like, resulting in the Whiskey Rebellion. Ironically, that tax was intended to pay off the debts of the Revolutionary War. Yet the precedent was set, government intervention into the spirits industry, and it continued and culminated to the, I guess you could say, the most severe punishment in Prohibition. Now, many of you may say, well, wait a second, beer and wine were also affected by Prohibition. Yeah, that's true. But the original intent of prohibitionists was to ban the production of spirits. And actually, the consumption of beer and wine were actually encouraged as an alternative to the evils of whiskey. It wasn't until more extreme elements of, you can say, temperance, or hijacked the temperance movement, that virtually all alcoholic beverages were banned. Now, post-prohibition, you could see that the beer and wine industry slowly recovered. And today we're experiencing a renaissance in those industries. It seems like there's a new winery or brewery popping up daily or weekly. Not so with spirits. Government regulations and taxes still limit the choices that we have, and it's very difficult to open up a new distillery. Yeah, there's some that are popping up here and there across this country. Many of those, however, are either virtual distilleries where the physical production is done at an existing plant, or they're wineries or breweries that are expanding their product lines into spirits. The standalone startup distillery is still rather quite rare. Which leads us to today, standing in front of Catoctin Creek Distilling Company. This is the work of Becky and Scott Harris, who you could say they've navigated the bureaucratic minefield to create and open the first legal distillery in Loudoun County since Prohibition. How'd they do it? I don't know. Let's go in and find out on MyJoogTV. How high is this mountain that I've fallen down? How far have I tumbled? So we've moved back inside here into the operations of Catoctin Creek Distilling Company, and we're here with Scott Harris, who's the proprietor and co-owner, I guess you'd say, yeah. And our musical guest today is Andrew McKnight. Now, Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot right away. Is when I first came to you, approached you about this topic, immediately you said, can we get Andrew? So what is it about Andrew's music that really speaks to you?
Well, you know, first of all, I mean, he makes great music. I really enjoy it. We first heard Andrew a little while back playing with his band Beyond Borders, and we really enjoyed the show. I mean, it was a fabulous show. But, you know, what we're doing here, I mean, we're all about local, right? And we're all artists, you know. We make whiskey, Andrew makes music, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in this local area, and it's all about celebrating and enjoying that. And so that's why I picked Andrew.
Yeah, and it sort of ties in. I've heard about you. The name recognition I was a little bit familiar, but I didn't know a whole lot about your music. So as I was researching you, I found out that, you know, as we head towards the Blue Ridge Mountains, your fan base sort of increases, and so it sort of ties in with the whole whiskey moonshine, you know, is out that way. So how much do you know about Scott's operation?
Quite a bit, actually. I used to be an engineer, and when I first heard about him, it was actually one of my bandmates, Les Thompson, who had found them on Facebook and liked them, and I said, Catoctin Creek Distilling Company, they got to be somewhere around here. So I've gotten to know them through, and a great deal of respect for what they're doing with the power of social media too, and in that sense that we're both, you know, locally based and locally derived, if you will, organically hatched ideas, but we both understand and recognize and appreciate the power of social media to help us bring our brands everywhere, you know, and even now that one can do concerts live on the internet and have people tune in from all over the world without ever leaving your porch or your recording studio or whatnot like that, I've got a great deal of admiration for what they've done in building the brand around this quality product, but also around the idea and around the this is our home base here.
Mm-hmm.
Western Loudoun County is a beautiful place to call home, but it's an inspiring place to be someone who wants to live in some kind of relationship, positive relationship with the land and the surroundings. And it certainly inspires a lot of my music.
Well, good. Well, let's talk about the operation. When in my introduction outside, I mentioned that this is a rarity, standalone distillery. So how did the concept come into your mind, and then how did you actually do this?
Yeah, well, actually, a rarity you say that. It's funny, we always disclaim the fact that we are the first legal distillery in Loudoun County since Prohibition. There are, in fact, probably quite a few guys up in the hills still doing what we're doing, but we wanted to do it legal and build a business out of it and make a quality product that we could put on the shelf and sell. And so my wife and I have always had a great love of things like wineries and distilleries and stuff, and we were a little bit, we almost needed counseling or something, because it seemed like every time we go on a vacation with the family, we'd find a distillery to go to or something, no matter where we went. And so I kept sort of bugging her about this idea, after 20 years in the computer business, gosh, I'd love to start a distillery. And she's like, that's crazy, that's crazy, that's crazy. And finally, I said it one too many times to her, and she says, well, damn it, Scott, go write a business plan. And I was like, oh, business plan, exactly. I think she thought that was the last she'd ever hear from me, and in fact I did, and we went and wrote the business plan, put together, and once, after many revisions and a lot of sweat and tears, we got a version that was like, this could work, we could do this, and so from there we went and got financing, bought equipment, and all of a sudden here we were, and we were doing it, and it was like, wow, I can't believe it, we've actually done it.
So how long, because obviously what we had talked about earlier is that wineries and breweries have an advantage because they can home brew and make wine. And so winemakers can learn at home before they actually go public. Distillers, legally, you can't.
Right, it's illegal. It's federal law. You cannot do home distillation, and that's a holdback from Prohibition. And so it is. It's very risky. There's a certain amount of classes you can take, or you could get a job at a distillery, but there frankly aren't that many distillery jobs in the country. There's many in Kentucky, there's California, and a few other places, but it is difficult to get a job in the trade. And so there's some classes you can take. There's some really good, in-depth classes you can take, and we took some. Learned the craft. Becky went to one that had a sensory analysis piece where she tasted over 75 spirits, both good and bad, some that were dreadful. So you can learn and teach your palate, what those flavors taste like. And so there was a lot of training in that regard. A lot of that was done in the first year. But all that said, there's still an awful lot of, you've got to put it all out there on the line, have all the equipment in place, have it all ready to turn on, and never having turned it on before the feds will give you a license. So you've kind of got to be a little bit,
sure,
I hope this works. I hope this works.
If we put it to the musical sphere, it'll sort of be like, Andrew, you saying, okay, I'm going to learn how to play the dobro. I'm going to give a concert a year from now, but I'm not going to be able to practice. I'm not going to be able to rehearse. I'm going to go out there live.
That's right. And then you're going to go out there live the first time.
Yeah, exactly. The first time.
It's a
step on
scary
stage.
thing.
Yeah, and so it's scary. It is. So what about the recipes? I mean, you got to come up with a recipe. How do you do it?
We did. Well, the recipe for making whiskey in a lot of ways is very similar to making beer. The recipes for making brandy is similar to making wine. Brandy is basically fruit-based wines turned into distilled spirit, and whiskey is basically a beer. And I've got experience in both of those. I've made both. I worked in a winery. My first job as a 15-year-old in high school was working in a winery, and I worked there for a few years and loved it. And then I went off and did my career in computers, and it was funny because I came back to the point, what was the best job I ever had? And I was in that winery, and I always loved that winery job. And this is a lot of overlap from that. So there was a lot of experience to be gained there as well.